homed in on the words that only she could hear. Theodore? Anxious, Sophie concentrated on the name, hoping that her perceptiveness would lead her to find the meaning behind the woman's fear as she spoke the man's name. Again, centering every ounce of her psychic abilities on the emotions felt by this woman, she experienced a stabbing fear so great she felt panicky. Acknowledging her gift, yet sometimes unsure of her own power, Sophie felt the force of the woman's complete and utter fear spread through her nervous system like an electrical jolt. Leaning forward in the chaise lounge, Sophie catapulted from her visions of another's past and became instantly aware of her present surroundings. She was sitting in the backyard, her pack of cigarettes lying on the small table beside her. Her hands shook as she reached for the lighter and smokes. This dream, this vision, this clairsentience, if that's what had just happened, was unlike anything she'd ever experienced. Last year, she'd discovered this ability when 2 children had gone missing. She'd been able to touch their possessions, feel their emotions in real time, seeing through their eyes as they'd been led down into a dank basement in Charleston. By the grace of God, the police found them before they were shipped off to a known pedophile. But this experience was different. She knew she was seeing through the woman's eyes, and the woman had lived in the early 1920s. Sophie could almost feel the lightness of her undergarments, something very different from the corsets of the previous decade. Most likely she was wearing a chemise or a camisole and bloomers. Her low-waisted gown with the just-below-the-knee hemline and the bodice typical of the time was made of the finest silk, embellished with rhinestones that sparkled when the right lighting hit them. She was waiting at the top of the staircase for her husband. All of this Sophie knew. That's it, Sophie thought. Theodore was the woman's husband. Sophie took some deep breaths, hoping to steady her erratic heartbeat, confused and trying to make sense of what she'd seen as she reached for yet another cigarette. She almost jumped out of her skin as she heard the back door slam. Placing a shaking hand on her chest, she shouted, "Damn you, Goebel! You just about scared the life right out of me." Goebel, wearing a navy robe and carrying 2 mugs of steaming coffee, sat down at the foot of the chaise. "When I woke up, you were gone. Figured I'd find you out here huffing." He held the coffee cup out for her. She sipped at the hot brew, then placed the cup on the table. "Huffing? Goebel, you're going to have to check your choice of words in the future. Do you really know what huffing is?" Sophie didn't want to talk about her dream, her vision, just yet. Still, the world's leading expert at changing the subject when it suited her, most often to distract her from her own thoughts, she raised an eyebrow, demanding an answer. "Well, do you?" she asked again. She pulled her legs up to her chest and drank her coffee, patiently waiting for her husband of 1 year and 1 day, almost, to answer. Goebel sighed, patted her on the knee, and took a sip of his coffee. "Why do I think you're about to tell me?" he asked, his voice laced with humor. "I can't believe you, a former New York police officer, don't know what huffing is." "Okay, Soph, you got me on that one. Of course I know what it is. It's called all kinds of names, bagging, dusting, sniffing, all ways to partake of a chemically soaked rag or a can of something like cooking spray or Freon, and I'm sure there are more than even I know. But yes, to answer your question, I know what huffing is. Next time I refer to your cigarette habit, I'll make sure not to use the word huffing. So now that that important information is out of the way, I would love to know why you, my intelligent and sexy wife, are lounging in the backyard in the wee hours of the morning." Sophie couldn't help it. She laughed. God, she loved this man. He knew her too well, but in her case it was a good thing. "I wanted to huff." They both laughed at her words. "Seriously," Goebel coaxed. "Are you feeling okay?" Sophie knew he wasn't asking if she was physically well. He wanted to know her mental state, if her psyche was in a good place. Not wanting to discuss her vision just yet, but knowing she would tell him soon enough anyway, she asked,